What's going on, everybody? This is Adi again from Thedos International. And on this series of our Patreon interviews, we have an extremely special guest. Some of you may recognize her, or perhaps some of you may recognize a trailer that some of you got to see with your colleagues in it from the Patreon chat. I have here Katia Dragotis, and she is working on an incredible docuseries that is observing culture through sport called PasSports. And the pilot episode is on the Derby of Eternal Enemies. And that's where some of you got to see some of your Patreon friends that were in there talking to her and chatting about the rivalry. Katia, how are you doing today? Thank you so much for joining us.
Good. Thanks for having me.
So, Katia, let's talk about your background first. Growing up in sport, tell us about how your journey through sport started when you were younger, and then, kind of how it transitioned into your career and what you've done and how you got to this point where you're doing this docuseries.
Yeah, I grew up around sports. My dad, interestingly enough, was really involved in basketball. So that was really, I think, the sport that I was most connected to. I grew up in Minneapolis and born in I'm just fuck it, 1989 when the Timberwolves came to Minneapolis as a franchise expansion team. Family was lucky enough to have season tickets, so like I grew up around Timberwolves in particular. I was at a basketball game 90% of my life, like growing up. So it's just something that was really close to me. So as I continued to get older and go into university and start to question what I wanted to do, I had this element of sports just kind of sticking with me of wanting to be involved. There's always been an element to sports that has been extremely interesting to me, like beyond the game in a sense. You could call it the business side, if you will, but it's a little bit deeper than that of really trying to understand what it is about sports that makes us as individuals and us as fans and us as communities be so enthralled with it. And I don't think it's a question you can fully answer, but it's something that's kind of driven my entire career in a sense too. So yeah, I went to university, got a degree in both business and journalism, and still was trying to kind of figure out what I was going to do. And started off a little bit on like the marketing PR side, and then really dove in my early 20s into the more hosting on camera reporting side of sports while I was still in Minneapolis, and then that led me to Los Angeles where I'm at now.
It's an incredible journey. And then how did you then decide that you wanted to what made you really want to take that leap between, let's say, okay, I grew up with basketball, I love basketball, but you know what? Let's get started with the Greek rivalry. Let's talk about this. Let's put this lens. What was the thing that made you make that jump?
Yeah, the journey and the story of like the creation of the show is actually way longer, and it feels like I'm at the beginning of this, but people don't understand how long this has actually been in the works. Kind of jumps back to really my early days in Los Angeles. I'm still working a lot of freelance opportunities, really trying to still do a lot of on-camera stuff while also being a producer and doing a lot of writing. I was a beat writer for um, the Raiders and the Chargers at one point. I worked on NFL Red Zone as a producer. So a lot of my early opportunity in sports actually really came from American football. So I really kind of dove my career into that side of things. And I think it just had to do with, I don't know. I think about this and 10 years ago and like women in sports and the career trajectory of that and what sideline reporting was and all of these things. There was a lot more opportunity at that point in American football. So I think that's how, and I love American football. So I'm very thankful and really happy that my career kind of took that trajectory for a long time. But it was different. Like I kind of always thought that I would work in basketball, in some sense of the word. But PasSports kind of came to be because I was frustrated in my career and frustrated with the kind of smaller stories that I was writing, especially on a beat where you're like covering an injury, which is great experience, but I'm a pusher. Like I like to push things. I like to create things. I definitely have like an entrepreneurial spirit, just hands down. So I started thinking about like I really want to have deeper conversations and I really want to have um deeper discussions, like I said, about like what sports are in a sense. Definitely like inspired by Bourdain and a lot of what he did with communities and through food, and understanding that through sports is was really like a driving factor in this. So created the show, and actually the derby was on the initial slate of season 1 ideas, and so just kind of got down to like the pitching situation and trying to get this in development. And this was pre-pandemic, and was lucky enough to have a production company that was like, cool, like, and actually, funny enough, the pilot back then was not going to be in Athens. It was actually going to be in America. They're like, hey, we'll produce this pilot for you. Let's partner on this, all these things. But we're not willing to take like an international leap with this yet. So let's do an episode here in America, see where it goes, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, cool. So we're gearing up, getting into pre production, trying to figure out what this is going to look like. And at this point, it feels like my ultimate dreams are coming true. And then the pandemic happened. So you can't
Yeah.
really have a travel sport show when you can't go anywhere.
No, unfortunately, COVID ruined a
Yeah.
lot of that for a lot of people.
Yeah. So it was honestly very heartbreaking in a sense, because I got so close to what I would want to call like my dream. So there's like a grieving element to it. And so I kind of put it on the back burner and did my own thing. Started actually a podcast company. And so I was doing that for 4 years, and really just kind of thought that that was just a small chapter in my life that has it been closed in a way. And actually, it was back in Greece last summer. I had taken, kind of had another personal, actually really projected from professional, not roadblock, just like questioning a lot of things. And so I had gone to Greece for 6 weeks to work on a novel project, and also just kind of reevaluate some elements of my business that I was in. And there just kept being signs and like drawing towards this concept of PasSports revisiting self. I was on the island of Syros for most of it, and they'd brought, actually there was a huge trophy presentation of Olympiacos on in the town square, and it was just like, first of all, my takeaway was like, man, America just like needs more fire in our sports, because like it was such a great spectacle. I'm like, God, we suck on celebrations. Like there are so many things that we could learn from Greeks and Europeans, and just in general, soccer or football celebrations that we could definitely bring here, which probably wouldn't go over well here, but it's
It
fun.
definitely would not, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that kind of revisited what was the concept and like the drive to do this. And then when I got home and was like, okay, I want to do the pilot, Athens and the rivalry really just continued to stick out on like a lot of different levels. First of all, just being the natural, like, this is kind of what drove you to pull this out of whatever, wherever it was hiding. And then I knew Athens well enough to be in like a very skeleton crew, boots on the ground. I'm handling everything by myself type situation. And I knew that being Greek American and the support that like the community has here and would hopefully translate abroad to, well, I mean, you were like the best help under the sun, but like who we can cherry pick to figure out would be what this needed to like get off the ground. So
Was there a was there any part of your Greek Americanness, we'll say, that also was the impetus for saying, "You know what? I have to cover, the Derby of Eternal Enemies," because I know I can say for me, anytime I promote anybody with that's Greek American or any Greek football, my first impetus is, look, this is a Greek thing. I want it promoted, and I have to do this. And like,
Yeah.
there's that feeling there. Was it similar for you?
Well, there's a couple, yeah, honestly, there's a couple different elements to it. One being there's a personal element that I wanted. This has been such a personal project to me. There was like something inside of me that like I wanted to explore and have that showcased. One of the biggest things, honestly, was Athens in particular, and a lot of things that I hear. I've been to Greece how many times now? And so when you're that person, everybody who wants to go to, and Greece is like a very big destination right now in travel, which is great. But everyone wants to call you and say, oh, well, where should I go? What should I do? What island should I do? And it's like, okay, let's pause for a second. And like, what do you want? Like, let's break this down because there's
Yeah.
so many different things that I cannot give you just this blanketed answer. But something that really bothers me that I hear a lot, and either from people who are asking about where and what they should do in Greece, or even just like conversations, they'll be like, well, you really only need like 24 hours in Athens. And I'm like, that's insane. That's like an insane statement to say. And I find it like disrespectful to the city, the people, the history, and like most importantly, like the modern Athenians, where like this is a thriving major city, and you're gonna tell someone that like you only need 24 hours in it. It's like, well, no, you just
Right.
don't know it. And I can understand the element of it where, it's 110 degrees in August and you just came off a 10-hour flight and it's the Plaka and it's very hot and you're like, holy shit, this is a lot going on. But you're not discovering like the true pulse of that. And so there was a huge element to me that was like, okay, so how can we explore what this city is and what the city can offer to the world, both from a modern standpoint and then also as a city that's like has this huge history and people think of that history, but what does that look like today in 2025, and how can we do that through sports and through this rivalry and through something that's like purely Greek and so passionate, and you've got like Greeks fighting, which the my thesis was that it really can like explore and understand what a culture and community is. And I think we accomplished that because it's the rivalry, in my opinion, of experiencing it just from, hands, boots on the ground and talking to people is obviously it's really deeply embedded, but it's also like deeply embedded in like what the Greek culture and spirits and passion and um just history of everything is. Like one of my favorite quotes from one of the interviews we did was he was like, the Greek people are like, if you go back in time, if you look at it, like they're very, very loyal, but they're also very divided. Like you forget that Greece was city states. So this element of city states all being Greek and competing against one another is been since the beginning of Greece. And I was like, that's a great point. I love that.
Yeah. And they only found unity when they were invaded by the Persians. So that's,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Which like, then go back to like the national team. Like that's sports in a sense too. But so, people are going to put away their pride for their individual team when it's on a international scale, typically.
You would hope.
Yeah.
At the very least. So, going back to something that you said about when you were on the island of Syro and you saw the celebration, I know for a fact Olympiacos would love to hear that the inspiration or something that put you back on the road to doing passports was the fact that you were there witnessing the Conference League title
Yeah.
celebration. So that's something I know for sure. I will 100% be clipping that for them
It
too.
was it was awesome because again, it's so different but also similar to like what you experience here in America when it comes to like your state team. Like,
Right.
I'm a Minnesota sports fan. Like that's everything. And so but it's different because so to set the scene, I was like in the sea and just having like a great fun afternoon I think it was a Saturday, honestly. And I just hear like craziness at like 1 or 2 in the afternoon coming from the square. And I'm like, what is happening? So I just like walk into the square and just see flares going and flags and red. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, this is wild that they're bringing and have such pride for a trophy that is like traveling to all the islands to celebrate. And I was like, this is really cool. And yeah, so it was definitely something that again was, I maybe almost want to say culture shock, that to see like such a passion on a random Saturday on Cetos.
So let's actually dive into that culture shock a
Yeah.
little bit, because especially as somebody that was so entrenched, it is so entrenched, I can say, in American sports and has
Mhm,
seen the culture here, even in different cities, much less the one that you supported. But when you began filming
mhm,
and talking to everybody and seeing what are things that you can say are such major differences between the culture of the sport in Greece versus the culture of the sport in the United States. You kind of hinted at it already when you've talked about how deep-seated some things are and like the rivalries and the divisions of what's going on in Greece. But
mhm.
let's explore that a little bit. What are some things that you can point out, especially to people that don't live in Greece and that don't get to witness this firsthand? They just know what they see. Oh, Olympiacos won this, or something happened here. Ivan Savidis brought a gun on the field for the Greek Cup. The owners fight with each other all the time. Tell us more what you saw on the ground, the front line for the individual who experiences this. What's
Yeah.
the difference?
So it's last year, one of my hosts that I was producing, she came to me and was like, "Hey, so my husband is a huge American football fan." And she's like, "In all honesty, it's like really affecting our marriage." And my therapist suggested to me, like, why don't you try like watching a game? Like, you don't know anything about this. Maybe you'll like it. So she came to me and said, will you teach me American football? Like, teach me some ways. And like, knowing me and knowing how you think that I would maybe like understand in any sense of the word why he sits Thursdays, Saturdays, Sundays, and Mondays and watches these games and drives me nuts. So I'm like, okay, so let me explain this to you. I said, American football is kind of like soap operas for men sometimes. So I'm going to explain to you the like drama of what's happening. So I would explain like this person was traded to this person. We got into these like kind of storyline elements and she was like, "Oh my god, this is." And then we got into like the wives and girlfriends and she was hooked and now she's like a football fan. It's hilarious. But that soap opera element is really something you experience when you really dive into the culture of what that is, because there is all of these players in the game being the tabloids and the owners and these things that you do see in American football, but I think, or American sports, but I think it's just so much more insulated because it's just so in the culture. My nephew, I was lucky enough, I have no idea how, he was here one day and I was like talking about PasSports and he was again kind of at like a life-changing transition in his life. And I was like, do you want to come film with me? And he couldn't get over everywhere in Greece of just like he couldn't stop taking pictures of like graffiti of Olympiacos or Panathinaikos, like wherever it was, and he just like found that super fascinating. So I think that element of just like deeply embedded um drama and then like how it portrayals into modern society too is super interesting. And then alone, like when you go to the match and it to experience a, first of all, nobody ever sits down during
No.
a second of the match. Um, but there's a weird element that like the opposing fan base isn't in there too. So actually kind of funny story. throughout the entire thing, because like I'm not necessarily like covering Olympiacos in this documentary. Like I'm trying to see both sides here, and I'm trying to be very like journalistic, neutral across all levels. So I'm very conscious of like my packing, which is very neutrals, blacks, grays, whites. Like
No
we're not,
green.
well, no green, no red. Like I'm just very much. So we go to the match and we're in all black, and I had gone to the bathroom and someone like honed in on my nephew and was like, "Oh, you're not Olympiacos." And they started like screaming at him. And I come down to the bathroom and I'm like, "Holy shit, what is happening?" So we had to kind of like break something up because they were so concerned that we had like snuck in here and like weren't supporting the team. So that was wild.
Yeah, that's a very, especially because for those that aren't aware, in the past, like, hooligans of other fans sneak into stadiums. They cause
Right.
so it's big issue in Greece. But
Yeah.
that's I'm sure that's not a moment he's going to forget anytime
He was
soon.
like, "What is happening?" And I'm like, "It's fine."
And of course, I'm sure they're screaming at him in Greek too. The poor
Oh,
kid,
yeah,
he
yeah.
has no idea what's happening.
No idea what's happening. Yeah, and until it got, like, aggressive, and then he was like, what are we I'm not."
And I hope they backed off at least. I'm guessing
Yes.
at
Yeah, yeah. We did not get our asses kicked, we're good.
that. um, the atmosphere also in the stadium is a lot different, right? In the States, when you go to games, right, you hear, defense, this, or the most you'll get out of people if they don't like something the ref does, you'll hear the asshole chants. I think that's pretty universal, right, in sports here. But you don't get a lot of the singing. And
Yes.
in the games, I mean, there's songs for everything. Of course, you have your Kati Makiko, you have the Olympiacos anthem that people sing all the time, but then there's the other chants that they make specifically for the other team, and some of those are insane. How would you describe that and the
There's a
atmosphere that
pulse.
you witnessed?
There's a pulse, like, constantly that is happening in the stadium that and some of it is literally just the drum of that's happening with the songs and the chants and everything like that. But like there's a murmur, there's a hum, there's a pulse that kind of reverberates around the arena the entire game. And I think that's really cool. Another thing that I think is really interesting is, and I also think it's very Greek, um, people are so critical yet supportive. So someone makes a bad play, they are losing their mind for like a second, but then they're like, "You're good, you're good, you're good. You'll get them next time." And you're like, "Okay." Like, wow, this is hilarious.
Typical Greek behavior.
Yeah, yeah, yes. So there's that. I'm curious, when was the first Olympiacos match or game or both basketball or football that you went to? I'm
So
actually very curious how it's changed.
so I actually had went to my first match in the stadium. I think it now was 2 years ago. No, less, yeah, 2 years ago. I
Okay.
went actually for the first time to, because usually when I would go to Greece with my family, it would be in June. There were never any
Right,
games, so I could
right.
never see it. I would get to walk in the stadium a lot, but there was never anybody in it.
Yeah.
So 2 years ago, I went with, my co-host Lambro and Marcial, and we went and saw a game together. It was the home opener against Pasianina, and the stadium, I think, was maybe half filled, but even then, half filled, everybody that was there was screaming, and it was pretty intense. And this was before the flare ban, I believe, because I remember there was a lot of smoke in the air and stuff. So
That's what I was gonna ask. Yeah, so there was still definitely the elements of there was a few smoke things that happened, and like I think at one point there was a laser on the field, but traditionally, and I know this because, well, I think it's very well known, but when I originally had pitched this episode, it was before the flare ban. And so to see just actual fire on the field and just that element is something that is completely foreign to like an American consumer. Or, back in the days of on the basketball court, people throwing coins and just everything on that side. So that
Fish,
was,
doorknobs, they threw
yeah.
all of that. Yeah.
So it was a little bit interesting to mirror the idea of what I thought I was pitching or what we thought we'd experience on even a crazier level 6 years ago to now still very, very exciting atmosphere, but in comparison, toned down. So I mean, obviously, I think all of those changes needed to happen for the safety of like players, fans, everyone involved. But yeah, there's still definitely that element. I think the other funny thing is like an American. It didn't really happen that much at the soccer game, but in basketball, there's like everyone was smoking, and it was like this is hilarious.
That's
This would
normal.
never happen in America.
No, yeah, that's and in the football games too,
Like in
maybe
the
you didn't see
stadium.
it. Yeah, in the
Yeah,
stadium, in the
yeah,
football stadium, they all smoke in there. Yeah,
yeah.
everybody does.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, that if you took away those smoking privileges there, you would have riots in Greece. So
Yeah,
it's
and like
not at
it
the point where they
doesn't
do that.
bother me because I've spent so much time in Greece and like that doesn't bother me, but like it is a wild experience when you come from when you're living if you're not used to that and you're living in America where like you can't smoke anywhere. Like
Nope.
that doesn't exist here. So
Yeah, not at all. So that's another culture shock that we can give to people that it's like, okay, this is all part of the experience
yeah.
when you come to Greece for sure.
We had dinner after the game and obviously we're talking about everything and you have I personally have a lot of passion and like want to do everything with this show and of course this episode really right and well and you can't get everything right and at the end of the day what is interesting about a docu-series is too you're fueling your experiences and you're sharing your experiences of what you're experiencing with the world and there was an element that like oh this was so cool and this was so amazing that I don't it's this bubble that like the point of this is to share and to understand and to show the world what this is. But there's also a little bit of a fear where you're like, I don't want this to be kitschy, where we could be the reason that an element like this or a community like this shifts because tourists are coming in. And I think what was interesting having seen so much of like the tourist side of Greece and spending a lot of time as that and then also just me as a Greek American and also coming with American friends you're like this it feels very Greek and I it feels like a really nice element that they still get to like hold on to that what is the balance of exposing it while also keeping it pure in a sense because I think a lot of Greece has changed with the over tourism aspect which is a huge component of their economy and it's needed. But how can you? What's the balance of keeping that and maintaining that? And I don't know if that what the answer is, but I think that's on the clubs to do too.
Well, those are conversations that they're even having now because with the after the Conference League win and what's been coming as a result, Greek football is back on the rise again. For the first time, the league is, if everything goes well next season, we'll be back in the top 10 leagues. The Olympiacos was in the round of 16, the Europa League. Panathinaikos made it to the Conference League round of 16. And then you had PAOK who made it to the knockouts of Europa League football. So Greek teams are performing in European competitions again, and they're making it further. And all of this is uplifting. And it's
Mhm.
part of for the football aspect and athletics. This is a discussion we had actually earlier this week, is that with the growth in our success in athletics, not just football, but basketball.
Which is huge right now. Like
Oh,
they're
massive.
yeah,
We're among the best teams in Europe, even though we didn't make it past the final four. But having, Olympiacos in the final four every year, the last 4 years, Panathinaikos won last year, and then they made it to the final four again this year. The Greek teams are among the best in Europe. So all of this is heavily tied to tourism. And they're going to have to decide, do you want the exposure? Do you want the extra money that comes from that with sponsorship and everything else? Or you have to find the balance. And unfortunately, it is what it is. Things will be, the things that make the sport more dangerous will eventually be filtered out, because
Yeah.
that's because when you start attracting and you're on the bigger stage, it's just how it is. I hope it doesn't become like what we see more stateside, as tame as it is, because the heartbeat that's there is not comparable. It's
Right.
not. So,
Right.
um,
Yeah, I
we'll
mean,
see what happens.
I haven't had the conversation with fans or experience of, we'll just use like the English soccer leagues, of how that has changed with the popularity of that coming more global. But yeah, how do you maintain that? I don't know. I don't know. It's above my pay grade.
Well, we'll see what happens and how they decide to deal with it.
What do you
Um,
think is what's the balance there?
in Greece,
Yeah.
I don't know if there will ever be a balance. I will say though, because as we're recording this yesterday, there's a very positive meeting between the top Greek clubs and UEFA with respect to how Greece can capitalize on what's going on to make the Greek league better, more competitive, and increase revenues. And the first thing is, for me, the biggest clubs, the owners have to like figure out how to cooperate. Like, one thing I explained to Greeks, and there's such a shock between Greeks and Americans, is how sports are treated, right? In America, everything is, the owners are in it together. Like, sure, there's like team disputes between maybe players and stuff here that drive drama, like the Celtics Lakers types of things,
Right.
but all of the owners, because most sports are collectively bargained, they're all trying to make money. Like, the
Yeah.
the MLS worked together to bring Messi to Inter Miami because they all knew they would all make a shit ton more money, even if Inter wins and the other teams lose. You would
Mhm.
never see that type of cooperation in Greece. They're all out to get each other. So they have to figure out. And Marinakis, who's President Marinakis, who's also the president of the Super League right now, said the same thing at this meeting, that we have to figure out how to cooperate, at least in football terms, so that we all can make more money.
Right.
And that's something, that's a concept that in the United States we take for granted because it happens at every level of sports. But in
Right.
Greece, it's oh my God, Yanakopoulos and the Angelopoulos brothers in basketball getting along, forget about it. Marinakis and well, Melisanidis isn't there anymore, but those two getting along, them and Alafouzos, forget about it. Him and
Yeah.
Savidis, forget about it. Those are things that in the past you would never have thought were possible. But that's what it would take, at least for
Right.
me.
Right. But and again, there's that kind of that element of soap opera, which is part of Greek sports. So how much is that deeply rooted that hopefully you still need that? But that's just me as an outsider too. So
Yeah.
can I
We
be like,
actually had joked that Andy Cohen needed to come
yes,
with Bravo, do like, forget
I
Real
know.
Housewives of Athens, do the Real Billionaires of
Yes.
Greece.
No, I think that's a great show. Yeah. Shoot, I'll produce that too.
There you go. I had sent a message to his team about it already. I never got a response. So
We can co-produce it. It'll be great. I love this.
there you go. Exactly. Well, I wouldn't be able, they won't talk to me. They'll talk to you.
You can be the creative producer on the back end.
There you
That's
go. Exactly. I
yeah.
can help with the Olympiacos stuff, but I can't help with anything else.
Yeah.
Katia, we're going a little over a half hour here. So just one.
You're good. Yeah, I mean, I've got like probably 6 more minutes before
Perfect.
I have to like dive in. So
Perfect. So I got one more question for
yeah,
you before we do the quick fire stuff. And my last question for you regarding this is, and you talked about what you wanted to do with the series, what you wanted to illuminate, but what is your goal? What is the outcome that you want the most? Not just with putting a spotlight on Greek sports, but with the rest of the docu-series that covers different sports in different countries. What is the goal? What are you hoping to achieve with all of this in the end? Like, we're talking the big picture goal, not just the immediate.
yeah, I think a lot of it is a little bit of an element with the location that there's a goal with. Like I said earlier, with the aspect to Athens of really understanding places and communities and cultures through sports. I think that's the ultimate goal. And what can we learn about a place and how they tick and how the people, it's like at the end of the day, how I've always seen PasSports, and I will continue to like fight for this element, is that it's not really a conversation or a sit down necessarily with the biggest players on the teams or the owners or all of those things. Yes, all of that adds to it, but really what makes sports at the end of the day are the people and the fans and the communities that drive what this is to be, at least in America and globally, billion-dollar industries. So let's highlight that. Let's highlight the people. Let's highlight like the changes that have occurred. And what I also think there's a really interesting element to what it can reveal about like cultural, social economics, everything that a place is going through and how you can observe that through sports. So that's really kind of been my whole goal on a lot of different things. And I think Athens is the perfect example of that, because it's this place, I mean, Greece in general, but Athens in particular, where it's stuck in the sense of an ancient city trying to figure out what it looks like in modern world, and how to preserve what this is and what it provides for the modern world, which is a lot of money from an economic standpoint. But then how do you be in 2025, and how does that affect its citizens? You know, how does it affect someone in Athens who is like, you know what? I'm very proud of my roots and where we come from, but I don't really want to talk about the Acropolis all the time. Like that was a bazillion years ago. Yet that also probably puts food on your table, because that's what where a lot of economic wealth comes from, or not even,
Right.
I shouldn't say wealth, just like
Income.
day-to-day
That's the income of the
income.
country.
Income. Yeah. So it's those conversations that I'm really interested in. So
Got it. Well, Katia, I have just 5 very quick questions for you. For every interview, we do 5 quick fire questions. So, first thing that comes to your mind, and just to get to know you a little bit better. So,
okay.
the very first question is, what is your favorite food?
Regular food or like Greek food?
Anything, whatever comes to mind.
Mm. My go-to, just like easy answer, is pizza. Like you can never go wrong with pizza. I think
Any
that's just,
specific type?
I'm easy. I'm simple. Like if you give me like a just amazing margarita pizza from a Neapolitan pullout thing, like that's my go-to.
Great choice. Now, what about your favorite movie and show?
Okay. Favorite movie of all time, I would probably have to go with Breakfast at Tiffany's. Yeah, very random.
Good choice. I've never
Always,
gotten that one before, but it's a very
yeah,
good one.
it's like you ever have those movies that you can put on, and this sounds bad, but like I'll put it on a plane and it's like a comfort, so I'll like fall asleep. And show, well, I gotta go with my dude Bourdain. Like that's my comfort show that I'll always put on and I always find interesting. It can be an episode that's 15 years old and you're still kind of learning about at least what was happening in that place at that time. And I love it.
What about your favorite vacation spot?
Greece. I can't go. I need to probably go other places.
No, listen, I agree with you 100%. We always ask, but usually when it comes to like Greeks, most people that have been to Greece usually will say Greece.
Mhm.
So that's usually the case. Now, what about your favorite? We say favorite football related memory because we do. Most people that we speak to have soccer, but what about your we'll just say for you your favorite sports memory?
I mean, the Derby is up there. It's to I think from someone that didn't grow up around traditional football, soccer, um, I think any type of international soccer match is going to be an unbelievable experience on any type of fan level, and it was just an unbelievable experience. Like I don't even know how to fully put it into words at 7:40 in the morning. But That's up there. And other than that, I mean, I'm a Minnesota sports fan. We don't have a lot of success, so there's not a ton that can hone in on. I mean, there's smaller memories like the Minneapolis Miracle or things like that that still hold true, but we haven't won that ultimate championship. In comparison to the Derby, I was able to go to my first Super Bowl in my hometown of Minneapolis, and so to see that in your hometown in a brand new stadium, that was a really cool experience too. But I had no. It was a good and bad thing for your first Super Bowl. I had no weight in the game. It was the Patriots and the Eagles. We had just lost to the Eagles to that would have taken us to the Super Bowl. So there was a huge heartbreak on that end. So you're sitting here being like, can both teams lose? And I got to experience just the world of what a Super Bowl is, which is wildly different than my experience with Olympiacos, because it is, if you've ever been to a Super Bowl or know anything about a Super Bowl, it is very corporate. It is very all about money. It's, of course, there's elements and fan bases there that this is like their shining moment, but it is wildly different.
That's actually a very good description of like some big culture differences with sports here. The final question, if money was not an issue, where would you go?
For to vacation or
Just in general, if there's a place that, maybe there's a barrier financially, where would you want to go?
I mean, there's places that I would honestly, like, you send me, go buy a ticket, I'm probably going to Greece, like, because it's just kind of it is like the place that I feel most at home and somewhere that I feel comfortable and in a very me type elements on top of the beauty and the food and the people and everything that comes along with it. So Greece is my easy answer. If someone's like, where do you want to go? That. I would love to, beyond that, of just like exploring places that are completely different. I studied abroad actually in South Africa the year after they hosted the World Cup, actually.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot of elements that I would love to explore, a lot more places there. I think like Egypt and Northern Africa would be really interesting to explore. So that's my side answer to Greece.
Well, Katya, thank you so much for joining me again. It was awesome to hear about your experiences filming, plus your experiences in sports. I think, it's this is probably one of the best interviews I've ever done with respect to like talking about the culture and how it's so different from what we experience here in the United States. I can tell people till I'm blue in the face about what I think is different, but like you've been on the ground, you've experienced it internally also everywhere. So you probably have one of the best experiences to be able to share in that
Yeah,
respect.
and I even just the couple games, the couple matches that I went to, it was like just a touch of it. I mean, we were even talking when we wrapped, because it was pilot too, like we're figuring things out. We're a very small team. I was like, I almost felt like this was part one. Like I want to go back and dive in a little bit even further and do part two, in particular in Athens. So yeah, I'm itching for more.
My bias would say, please go back and do another one. I'd want
Yeah.
to see as much of the Greek football aspect as possible. But thank you again so much for joining us. Real quickly, tell the audience where they can follow you so that they can check out and keep up to date with what's coming to PasSports, even though some of them were already involved in one of your pilots, to let
Yeah.
them know where they can follow you and follow what you do.
Yeah, my personal Instagram, Katia Dragotis, spelled there. That's where you can probably keep up to date on everything that I'm doing mostly. We do have a PasSports, it's called PasSports Show Instagram right now, very, very small. We'll be continuing to put more content out there as we dive further, but my personal Instagram is probably where the most you'll find up to date.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Mm.
Guys, I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, you can message me, or of course, you know now where to find Katia. You can message her as well. And as always, this is Theos International by the fans for the fans, and we will see you all next time.